Well, good morning. I'm just going to pray again because I want to. It's a free country, so I can. Holy Spirit, I'm going to pray and move things. This is what prayer looks like in my house. I rearrange pillows. I don't know why. Dear Jesus, have your way. Yep, that's it. Have your way. I have nothing else to say, God. That's the prayer. Have your way. In Jesus' name. So in my final year of high school, which was grade 13. Yes, I'm that old that there was grade 13. You too. Who else went to grade 13? 3 of us. We're probably Ontario kids, probably, right? Okay, so you had to go from grade 9 to 13 was high school. And in my final exam, my final physics exam, which was kind of like the equivalent of first year university physics, in the exam, unlike what my kids did in their grade 12 exam, where they were given a formula cheat sheet, like a keynote on the side of your exam, like that was not given to, that did not happen. That does not happen back then. It was like you were responsible to memorize the formulas. I'm going to have to take this off because I can't breathe very well. Excuse me. You were responsible to know the formulas. And so I would study these formulas to know what to do where. But the very first thing I did is when they give you the test and they go, okay, start. I would turn over my paper. I would not look at any of the questions. And down the side, all the formulas, before I forgot anything, because I forget. Okay, so I'm memorizing, put these formulas down the side. I'm like, oh, okay, I think I got them all. Now all I need to do is figure out which problem applies to which formula, and I can just insert that and get the right answer. So today's story is often inadvertently presented like a formula for faith. They don't mean to present it this way. It's just kind of the way people interpret it. Like, in this story, if I just have the right formula, then I can just figure out what I need to do when to get the desired result. And bada bing, bada boom, I get what I want. Okay? I'm starting right off the top with this caution. There's no formula for faith. Formula says if you do this and believe that and do the right things, then the right things will happen and you'll get what you want. Formula puts you in the driver's seat. It actually, ironically, strips you of the need of God altogether. It's like if I just believe the right things, say the right things, do the right things, what do I need God for? Because I'm getting what I want. Can you see how that can happen? Where we take biblical principles, biblical examples, biblical things to aspire to, and instead of like seeing the need for God and seeing how it draws us closer to trusting Him and leaning on Him and learning from others into a further and stronger faith in God, we take it, we insert the right thing and go, I should be getting what I want right now, God. I did everything you asked. Can you see how like way far off that is? Yes? Okay. So this is not a formula for faith. This is an example of faith, drawing us further into our need for God. Deal? We understand that? That's the baseline. Pretty sure everybody knew that? Just want to make that clear. Okay. So let's jump into this story. It's in Mark 5, verses 21 to 24. I am guessing it's a familiar story for at least most of you. So it says this: when Jesus had again crossed over to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the lake. Just to note, this is somewhere that it was kind of his home base, this area. He came here a lot. Some people even think that he lived there during this time, that he would go and travel and then end up back where he was. So people were familiar with him at this point in this area. They knew who he was, what he stood for, what he could do. One of the synagogue rulers named Jairus came there. Seeing Jesus, he fell at his feet and pleaded earnestly with him. My little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed and live. So Jesus went with him, and a large crowd followed and pressed around him. Okay, so I'm going to pause there for a second, because this is where it gets fun. You can read stories in the Bible and you can just be like a little children's book. Don't tell my son that I used to do this, but when little children's books are too elaborate and I want to go to bed, they can't read, right? So I'm like, the paragraph would be like this long, and I'd be like, and the duck crossed the street and said hello to his friend. Next page. And like, I would just skip the story to get to the point, because I was like, yeah, they don't care. It's a story. It doesn't matter. They don't need to know this in life. You know, la, 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 the end, bedtime. Really? That was such a short story. I'm like, yeah, well, don't blame me, blame the author. Okay, I just like skipped through it, okay? And sometimes we can kind of approach Bible stories a little bit the same way of like, la, 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 story, 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 story. Yeah, I've heard this before, okay? But today, I don't want to do that, okay? I want to like really use our imaginations and think of this as like a movie casting presentation. Like, can we make this a movie? So, you know, directors are kind of weird and screenwriters are kind of weird, and they think like they just are so imaginative that they're thinking of every possible angle and trying to look at this. How can we best present this story? Can you envision that little team meeting? You know, maybe we're in Portland and drinking some coffee with, okay, Aaron knows what I'm talking about. Okay, so we're at this coffee table and we read this story, this true story, and we're like, okay, what I really want, what I'm seeing here is Jairus' perspective. I want to tell the story of Jairus like from his view. Okay, do you guys understand what I'm doing here? So the scriptures right now are kind of like doing this aerial shot like this and showing like the disciples were just telling what was going on. Like, Jesus came from over here, so they have Jesus' perspective, the disciples' perspective, Jairus' perspective. There's a bleeding woman who got healed. There's a crowd. There's more people from his home. And they're kind of telling the whole story from this aerial shot, okay? Well, this morning, to make it like grasp onto what I'm trying to say, we're going to movie director this, and we're going to zoop just Jairus, okay? This is Jairus' story, and so it's going to be told from that angle all the time. So let me set this scene. Let me present this to you. Jairus is a synagogue ruler. Synagogue is not the temple. Okay, it was a gathering place for worship and teaching. Sound familiar? It would be more similar to a modern-day church than the temple was, right? It was a place people gathered, people learned about God, people sang. So a synagogue ruler was actually an elected person from the town, and their job was to supervise the building itself. So similar to Derek and I, like, we have to rent the building, we need to get volunteers in here, this needs to be fixed, we need to buy that. Very similar. Oh, there's some concrete falling off of this column. I better get someone to fix that. That's his job. And to supervise the supervision of worship and teaching. So you can kind of see how very similar this is, okay? So let's just say he was a pastor. He wasn't, but it's close enough, okay? So he's a pastor. The difference in that time is they were wealthy and very well respected because they were elected into like, ooh, you're the synagogue ruler, okay? It had one of those, ooh, okay? That's not really true of pastors. Okay, so there's the difference. He was important, he was wealthy, everybody knew him. And his daughter was dying. The language that he uses is like expressing a great tenderness towards his daughter, which I'm imagining, I don't know for sure, I'm imagining was not like the most common thing in that day. But he expresses great tenderness about this daughter, my daughter, my only daughter. My only daughter. We know from Luke, she was 12. And we know from Matthew 9 that she was at the point of death. And it means like at this point, he wasn't even sure if she was still living. because he was, waiting there, and then I'm going to go get Jesus. I've heard him, he's in town. I'm going to go get Jesus. So I'm going to use these last moments to go get him, but she's in such bad shape, she's right there. So I don't even know that my trip here could have been too late. That's where we're talking about. So Jairus deeply loves his daughter, deeply is respected in town. There was probably some pressure from the Pharisees and whatnot, all these important to do people, because a few days or weeks before, Jesus had healed in a synagogue, probably his, although we don't know for sure. And the Pharisees didn't like that. They didn't like that he healed on the Sabbath. Remember all that? They were like, you're not what we want you to be. So from that point, it says the Pharisees were plotting to kill him. And the Pharisees and the synagogue rulers were kind of chums because they were on that same class of people, well-to-do, elected, we have it all together, we are very wealthy, I'm important, okay? So there's kind of this understanding that more than likely, Jairus would have been under quite a bit of pressure to deny who Jesus was. Again, none of this we know, but we're gathering from culture. We can make some assumptions that there's a lot of political games going on with Jairus. Okay? You got the scene? So then picture this. Jairus is just coming from his dying daughter whom he loves. Now it's interesting. Let me just paint this one more picture. If he was wealthy, he had servants. They could have come and got Jesus, right? So it's interesting that Jairus shows up. He's taking the last moments of his daughter's life to come and get Jesus. Let's keep that in mind. That's something. And he comes and he's seeing Jesus. He bows to him and begs him to come to his house. Now already, think of the political nature of all of this, of if I show my support for Jesus, what will that do for my elected status? Does he care? No, it's clear. No, it is not about politics at this point. It's not about anything. It's about my daughter, my situation. My daughter that I love is dying, and I know that you are a healer. So he comes and he bows to Jesus and begs him, if you come and lay your hands on my dying little girl so that she can be healed and live. And then these awesome words. And Jesus went with him. Yay. This is okay, great. And then there's these words. And a large crowd followed and pressed around him. Now Luke says about the crowd that the crowd was so intense it almost crushed them. Okay, so I want you to picture movie scene. Okay, we're going to need a lot of extras for this scene. Can we make a call out to just random people that will just be in a crowd wanting to see something spectacular? I'm envisioning Disneyland on Christmas, okay, where it's just you can't move and you're irritated because even though you are pressed right up against the person in front of you, I don't know what this person is seeing behind you, but they think you can move. So they just keep pushing. And you're I don't even know. And now, if you want to see my bad side, put me in Disneyland on Christmas Day, okay? I am not that person, okay? I need my space. I need you to stay over there. And when I had younger kids, we went to Disneyland when Jaden was little. It was you can shove me around, but if you touch the stroller, my baby's in there. I turned into this person, okay? But think of this crowd where all of a sudden, Jairus' daughter is dying. Now, in Jairus' mind, if I was Jairusette, okay? And my little girl is dying, and I just left her to go get you, get in my car right now. I'm blowing through every red there is. Okay, I'm not going to die, but I'm not waiting just to be polite. I'm going home, right? And now we have this large crowd, Disneyland-type crowd, pushing and shoving. Okay, can anybody else feel the irritation? I have somewhere to be, and you are in my way. Yes, very, very much. Hopefully he was a nicer man than me, but I don't know. How can people be nice in that situation? There's traffic. There's a crowd. So we're in on this movie. The director is like, let's get a shot of Jairus' irritation. Like, let's just pause there for a moment so everyone can feel this irritation going on, that he wants to move and go home, but the crowd is so intense that they can't really get going anywhere quickly, okay? So this is going on, and then we pick it up here. This is from Jairus' perspective. There's lots more scripture involved here, but it's all behind the scenes of somebody else's story. So in Jairus' mind, crowd, irritation. Okay, here I am trying to go down to my dying daughter. And the next thing that he hears is Jesus stopping and saying, "Who touched me?" Okay, I absolutely love this because I just do. I absolutely love how the disciples responded, okay? The disciples know and love Jesus. They know who he is. They know what he can do. And they say this. You see these people crowding against you, right? Like you have eyeballs, yes? You're not like transcending somewhere else, like you're here, right? Did we lose you? Like, I absolutely love this because so you have all the respect in the world for who Jesus is, and you're amazed at the miracles, and then you're in this crowd, like you're at Disneyland, okay, and your husband goes, "Somebody touched my jacket," and you're like, okay, that's nice. They touched mine too. Do you know what I mean? You can feel like that, I love you, Jesus, but you're going a little crazy right now. Like what is going on? Now, from Jairus' perspective, as much as it's kind of weird to the disciples, and they're like, I don't know what's going on with you. Think of Jairus' perspective. We're in a hurry. My daughter is dying. Jesus just agreed to come with me, and Jesus stops in a crowd and says, "Who touched my clothes?" Now, Jairus does not have the same kind of relationship as the disciples. As much as he knows who Jesus was, he hasn't followed him day in, day out for a couple years. So this would be my reaction, like, I got nothing. Like, I came here for this, and this is what we're stopping for. Like, can you really put yourself there? I want you to be in the movie with me. What are you feeling in this moment? Like, I'm guessing you have no idea what you're feeling in this moment, right? You're just like, truthfully, I have no idea what's going on. This is just mass chaos. Now, if you don't know this story, there was a bleeding woman who had been bleeding for 12 years, poor, broken. She would have been considered unclean. So as she's pressing through this crowd, she's technically making everyone that she touched unclean. You know, there's a whole lot going through her head of the risk she's taking to touch Jesus. There's a whole other movie there, part 2. I'm not going there today, but it's a good movie if you want to read it. Who touched me? She came forward. She told him his story, and he says to her, "Go in peace. You've received your healing," which was just code word for, I want you to know you didn't steal your healing. I am freely giving it to you. Please, please, go. Now, this is in verse 35, back to Jairus' movie. All of this wonderful thing happened. I have no idea how long it took for her to come forward. I'm guessing at least 5 or 10 minutes, which how many of you know in times of crisis, 5 or 10 minutes is an eternity. 5 or 10 minutes can be a matter of life and death, right? I remember when when I was in labor with Jaden, my first 2, they were scheduled. I can't remember what it's called, but there was a schedule, and so it was like I wasn't going into labor, so they booked me an appointment, And I had to show up at the hospital and at such and such a time. So Derek and the first two showered, he shaved, he grabbed the camera, he put together the bag, and off we go. Now with Jaden, I actually went into labor. But Derek, this is his third time, he's like, okay, great. I'm just going to jump in the shower. He jumps in the shower. I'm down in the kitchen, and I'm breathing through these things. My mom's with me, and she's like, just breathe, sweetie, just breathe. I'm like, where is he? And he's like, she calls up, and he goes, I'm just shaving. And my mom goes, I love you, Derek, but she doesn't care. You need to come down. He goes, I'm almost done. And we're racing in this car. And I was like, what are you doing? He goes, well, I didn't want to be hairy in the pictures. I don't care. That's what I can see in this Jairus moment of like, what are you doing? I mean, what are you doing? I know that she needs healing, but she's been bleeding for 12 years. She can bleed for another 10 minutes. You know, like that is maybe too human of me to admit, but come on, you're thinking the same thing in your humanness. And this is verse 35. While Jesus was still speaking, saying, daughter, go in faith, be healed, go in peace. While he's still speaking. So Jairus is not really hearing this part of the story going on. He's not hearing the explanation. Members of his household came while Jesus was still speaking. So back to the movie, we don't hear the end of this conversation before this one is starting. We don't know what's going on with the woman. All we know is somebody touched Jesus, and he wants to know who. And then we kind of are back into our own story. And while he was still speaking, some men from the Jairus' house said, your daughter is dead. Why bother the teacher anymore? Okay. Again, maybe it's just my movie mind. But if my daughter passes away and one of you comes to me and says, your daughter is dead, etiquette. Like there are nicer ways of saying, your daughter is dead. Your daughter is dead. Why bother the teacher anymore? Okay, so we kind of know that this is kind of one of those, I'm just going to call it how I see it type of people. Like, I'm not going to beat around the bush. She's gone. Let's go home. It's too late. Okay, let's pause from, actually, no, let's not pause from Jairus' movie. Last thing he heard, who touched me? Well, I touched you because of my healing. Your daughter is dead. We're still in a Disneyland crowd, don't forget. This is not a comfortable place. I don't know about you, but when I read this story quickly, I think, man, Jairus must have just been rock solid in his faith, like no emotions and no nothing. He just believed Jesus. He never flinched. He never had an emotion, and he just went forward. But does the story actually say that? It gives us no indication necessarily of emotional response. Either way. But if he loved his daughter a lot, you know in that moment when somebody comes to tell you that your loved one has passed away, you know you either are in shock and you cannot process it at all, or you are in utter grief. One of the two. Maybe there's more. But there's a human response to things that you know is here even though they didn't write about it. Now this is a great movie moment. Let me back up. While Jesus is still speaking, some men came from Jairus' house. Your daughter is dead. Why bother the teacher anymore? And this is what happens. Next verse. Ignoring what they said, Jesus told the synagogue ruler, don't be afraid, just believe. Okay, so I know this. I know I said I'm telling it just from Jairus' perspective, but just for a moment, we're going to Jesus going on, okay? He's dealing with who touched him. This lady comes forth, tells her story, and he says, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. And while he's saying that, he knows what news Jairus is hearing. And so in Jesus' mind, he's saying, in Jesus' movie, I should say, go in peace, be freed from your suffering. Jairus, don't be afraid, only believe. Can you see that? Can you? This, and to like, okay, this is what gets me really excited. In the movies, if I'm a director, excuse me for 1 second. I don't know if you're a big movie buff, but Derek is, and so I appreciate cinematography and stuff like that now. And you know that this moment that Jesus gives Jairus, don't be afraid, only believe. Can you see the eye contact that's there? Like, there's no way on earth that Jesus didn't look him straight in the eye for that. Like, even though it doesn't say, and Jesus looks him straight in the eye and said, come on, you don't say something like that in such a pivotal moment without one of these. Like, I'm looking right at your soul. Because in Jairus' mind, like, he's dealing with something else. Jesus is talking. Jairus is receiving information. And Jairus, like, ooh. Can we just all appreciate that moment for a minute? Because this isn't a movie. This is Jairus' life. So Jairus has this moment that connects with him on a deeper level. Like, I heard that, and I'm ignoring that. And I'm calling you, Jairus, to listen to me and me only. All of that was said in those 2 sentences. So let me go back just for a moment. Just for a moment. Jairus has this like hyper connection moment where Jesus is saying to him, like, I know what you just heard. I know what you feel. I know what you perceive. Do not let fear talk to you, and only believe the things that I am saying. Only right here, you and me, bud, just you and me. In this crowd, it's just you and me. And Jairus has this opportunity to trust both the ability and the character of God right there. It was like given to him. Like, right? Like I don't know if you've ever had this moment. So I was trying to think of one that Derek and I maybe have had. And there's been plenty, but I can't come up where Derek has kind of been like if I think probably cliff jumping. I was kind of too scared to cliff jump. And he was like, you got this, like right in my face. Like, you got this. And you go jump off that cliff. And like, okay. This is a much better thing to apply this to than go jumping off a cliff. Okay, but that moment where somebody just speaks into your soul and it's just you and them. And they give you the gift of like, okay, you and me. Contrast that with the people from Jairus' household. Your daughter is dead. This is the sentence I can't get over. Why bother the teacher anymore? Now, what kind of a cold-hearted person do you need to be? Do you think that Jesus is? Okay, put it this way. Derek is pastoring here at the church. And you have an emergency over there that you know he can help with. So you come over here and you say, such and such. So somebody has fallen. They can't get up. They need you to lift them up. Can you come right now? And they fall further, okay? They fall a second time. And now their like back is broken. And the friend comes over and says to Devin, let's say Devin asked for help. Picture this. They fell again. Don't bother Derek. Okay, one, you have to believe that Derek can't help you physically anymore, which clearly they didn't. And let's put some understanding there. Jesus had never risen anyone from the dead at this point, so they really did believe that like his ability to physically help them was too late. But secondly, let's just say that Jesus did not intend on raising her from the dead. Okay? What kind of a person do you think Jesus was? That it's like, you know what? Never mind. Just keep doing what you're doing, and I'll go deal with my grief by myself. Like, never mind, Derek. They fell twice. I know you don't care, so just keep preaching, and I will go deal with the bloody mess and the emotions of this by myself. Like really? Their misunderstanding of the character of God is ginormous. So they knew he was a healer, but they had zero understanding of the person and character of God, right? Like, no, it's too late. Why bother him? Here's how I know this. Why bother him? Do you want to know what that word is? To skin alive. It means like to irritate to the nth degree. Stop irritating Jesus with your problems and just send him away. Okay. Who are these friends? Who are these people? It means to skin alive. Figuratively means extremely annoy, to bother, harass, fatigue, wear someone out. So these friends are coming to him with the news of what happened and their assessment of what you should do about it. The situation is too late, and now you're irritating this poor man. Just send him away and stop bothering him. Can you see why, not only in his ability, like I can do something to help you, but also in his compassion, why Jesus addressed that immediately? Ignoring what they said. It wasn't Jairus who was ignoring it. It was Jesus ignoring it. Like, he wasn't like, what kind of a person do you think I am? It's just like, Jairus, you and me. You and me. Know who I am. Hear my words. Hear my heart. You and me. Don't be afraid. Only believe. Don't be afraid. How? Only believe. Believe what? Jesus' word. His word. Again, this is where I'm going to point to. This is not formula. If God hasn't said, this is what's going to happen, I can't just claim something of like, you know what, that's what I want in my future, and I'm just going to claim it, and I'm going to use Jesus' name and parade all over it and dance all over it if Jesus didn't actually give that to me in the first place. Now, if it's a word to you, please do that. But I'm not putting faith in faith itself. I'm putting faith in Jesus. That your word is the truth, God. And if you make a promise, you will be good on it. That if you've made promises to me, they are the truth no matter what is swirling around. I can know that what you have said is true. I cannot let fear come in and say, God's not actually who he says he is. And if you had this, but I can believe what Jesus says to me in his word. I can trust it. As a matter of fact, seeing the opposite, like if Jesus said the polar opposite thing to Jairus, I think it actually makes what he did say a little bit more clear. So this is not what he said. Okay? This would be the opposite of what he said. Be afraid. Okay, can I just stop there? How many times do we feel something say, be afraid? Yeah, he didn't say that. Be afraid. Just distrust and disregard and dismiss and dispute and reject and ignore and doubt and challenge and discount and question and skepticize and discredit and suspect everything that I have said. How many of you got convicted with one or two of those words? Don't be afraid. Only believe. Okay. This is what I'm about to tell you is super, super good stuff, okay? And I want you to walk away. If you don't remember anything that I said today, this next point is what I want you to believe, what I want you to hold on to, what I want you to embrace, what I want you to ask God about. When I was looking at the opposite of what Jesus said, I'm looking at antonyms for all this kind of stuff, and then I came to the word only believe, and in English language, there really isn't an antonym to only believe because because it can mean lots of different things. So then I was looking at synonyms, like, okay, well, maybe synonyms, which means the same thing. How will that help me understand what only believe means? Because in my version, in my NIV version, it says just believe. Now, I don't know about you, but when I hear that, my English modern culture gets in the way, and I hear, just trust God. Just do it. What's your problem? Just. That's not at all what it says. Just believe. I don't know why you just got news of your daughter being dead. I don't know why you're emotional. Like, no. That's not what he said. Only believe would be a better translation. Or this. Please, Lord, help them catch this. Believe me exclusively. Ooh. Exclusively? I had to look it up. Okay, I'm a big word nerd, okay? Any other word nerds, or am I like the only one? There's like 2 in the room. That's okay. We're a rare breed, but we love it, don't we? They're so fun. So I looked up exclusively because I'm like, that's good. And not surprisingly, it just means to the exclusion of something else. I'm like, ooh. It was one of those moments where God was talking to me. I usually have my little chair by my fireplace and my cup of tea and my blanket wrapped around me and my books everywhere, my worship music going. And when I looked this up, to the exclusion of others, I had to do one of these. I got up and I was like, yes, to the exclusion of others. That makes sense to me. Don't be afraid. Believe me exclusively, which means that anything that somebody else says that does not line up with who you are, I exclude that from my calculation. Okay, let's go back to the physics example. There are calculations, there are factors in physics that sometimes you exclude. Or let's look at the court cases. When somebody presents a piece of evidence that is actually tainted and the judge says, exclude that from your decision. It's not valid. It's not part of this decision. It's not part of this situation. You literally have to take it off your plate and exclude it. Now, does that speak to some people here? Don't be afraid. Believe Jesus exclusively. So that anything that says he's not who he says he is, you're not who he says you are, all of this stuff that I've been talking about week after week, and honestly, I feel like every time I speak, it's the same message. Like, don't listen. Listen to the truth. Listen to the truth of God's word. Listen to who he is. Find out who he is and stick to that, because that is your plumb line. That is the only person telling you the truth 100% of the time. So believe exclusively. Ooh, I feel like all of a sudden in all of this Disneyland crowd, take that camera and go and make that noise that's super popular, that one of those. Do you know what I'm talking about? What is that? Just some electronic slowdown music that it's like, and everything slows down to get to this awesome part of the song. And then goes, like, okay, we're at that moment, okay? Like, this is all going on, your faith be healed, and and then Jairus, don't be afraid. Believe exclusively. And then life keeps going. But that moment is like the movie moment of like, yeah. So where's Jairus in this? Like, if you're Jairus, what now? You're still in the crowd. You're still being pushed around. You still have the house of Jairus in front of you. Your daughter is still dead. Like, you're just, okay. What? Okay. Okay. So I was looking, what does Jairus do? What does Jairus' faith look like? What does believing exclusively look like? And I poured over the scriptures, pouring over them. There's no formula. It says in verse 37, he, which is talking about Jesus, he did not let anyone follow him except Peter, James, and John. So we went from a Disneyland crowd to very few people, maybe 6, following him home. And when they came to the home of the synagogue ruler, which is Jairus' home, Jesus saw a commotion with people crying and wailing loudly, and he said, why all this commotion? Why all this wailing? The child is not dead, but asleep. And they laughed at him. And then after he put them all out. Okay, so Jairus is a very important man, remember? He's an important dude. And Jesus doesn't let the town follow them to Jairus' house anymore. So if you're like an elected political leader, and this Jesus guy shows up and says, no, you can't come to Jairus' house, you know there's going to be those people looking at Jairus like, what do you say, Jairus? Because you're more important in this town than this guy, right? Like, you're just like, no, I'm not going to move until Jairus tells me to. So more than likely, Jairus is going to have to give one of these. Just do what he says. I agree with him. So he goes to the house, Jairus' house. Let's put this into Derek's house. Let's say a loved one of ours has died. And in the culture, you have to understand, in this culture, they would hire professional mourners to weep and wail. And the more noise they made and the more mourners you had, the more important you were. So there's this status of like, this girl in this situation is so important. And let's say it was at my house and Jesus walks in and says, why all this commotion? The girl is not dead. She's sleeping and you need to leave. You know, my friends would be like, you don't know this place? Shawndra, what do you say? And then you're in this moment. Society says I should bring more people in here for my reputation, to prove how much I love my daughter, et cetera, et cetera. But Jesus is saying, it's time for you to go. So you know, there's that nod. Do what Jesus says. Like, I agree with Jesus. What he's doing, I do. What he's saying, I say. And then they took her into the room and Jesus said, little girl, get up. And she rose from the dead. And they were astonished. Which says to me that this picture of Jairus just having like this faith that's just not emotional at all, like just rock solid, like I totally know everything that's going on and let's go heal my daughter, and is a little off, because why would you be astonished then when it happened? So there was an element of like, I am walking in faith and I'm trusting you, Jesus, but I'm still human and I'm still fighting all this, but I'm trusting you. So what did his faith look like? It looked like following after God. Letting his word be truer than any other word. Letting his directions hold more weight than any other. But Jairus, your daughter is dead, and this is what we do, and this is how you prove how much you love her. But Jesus said to get out, and so I'm asking you to get out. That's faith. I don't know what Jesus is going to do. I don't know how he's going to do it. I just know that He's still invited me, and he's still coming to my house, and I'm still following after him. I'm still going to do what he says to do. I'm still going to say what he says to say, and I'm just going to agree with Jesus. I'm just going to agree with everything that he says. Shawndra, you are called. It doesn't feel like it, but I agree. I agree. Yes, I am called, but it doesn't feel like I am, but I agree. Shawndra, I love you more than I can possibly explain to you. Faith says, I agree. I believe you. I believe you exclusively, over and above my own thoughts of me. Exclusively. Believe exclusively. Don't be afraid. How? Only believe, or believe exclusively. What are we to believe? We are to believe Jesus' word. I'm going to ask the band to come up while I just close here. When I read stories like this, I don't like calling them stories because they are like somebody's life. When I read history like this, I kind of want to apply it to like a really specific situation, because Jairus did receive this word, don't be afraid, only believe. And then we know from Matthew, Jesus also said, and your daughter will live. He was given a very specific promise to this. And I want to like take that in my situation and be like, Jesus, I'm not afraid. I believe you. Now tell me what's going to happen. I want that, right? Like I want like a specific, not like a generic promise from, I want like, Shawndra, on this date at this time, this is, I want like details, like, you know, where there's small print involved, like that kind of detail in my life. And when I don't get it and I'm at the feet of God and I'm looking for direction, and I'm like, I don't understand, God, I don't understand. You won't give me an answer. You won't give me an answer. In those moments, how easy is it? Because he won't answer very specifically about one specific problem. How easy is it to just throw out everything else that he's ever said to us? Like, I don't mean to be, I mean, he's said a lot. A lot. And yet if the details aren't spelled out directly in here, I like tend to want to just toss this aside and be like, well, what good is this? All of this information, and I don't know what to do in this situation right here, right now. Am I alone in that? Is it? Please tell me this is a human experience, or like anyone feel this way sometimes? Okay, thank you. I just need to know that I'm not super crazy sometimes. God was very, very blunt with me this week, and I appreciated it because I actually really like blunt people. He asked me, what do you know to be true of me 100% of the time? And I said, well, there's lots of things I don't feel are true, but I do actually know a lot about you, God. I actually do. He goes, start naming them just off the top of your head. So these were the ones off the top of my head, and this is what I'm giving you today. That if you don't have that word from God to hang on to, actually, even if you do have that word from God to hang on to, these words, the character, the nature of God, is what I want you to believe exclusively in each and every situation 100% of the time. Always. Always true. You can go ahead. Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So when they had that conversation in heaven and decided what the plan was going to be, and decided that Shawndra was going to be part of this plan, in that conversation right there, the heart of God, the heart of Jesus towards me is the same as it is in this very moment. That the same Jesus who died on the cross, in the very moment where he gave up absolutely everything for me, for for me to live with him, for me to be with him, for us to have a relationship in that moment that cost him everything. He's the same. And so when I look at certain circumstances and I say, why you don't care? It feels like he doesn't care, but it is not true. He is the same. Hebrews 13, he will never leave me or forsake me. He will never leave me nor forsake me. Never. Jesus, in whom there is no shadow of darkness at all. Oh, I love that verse. There is not even an inkling of evil towards me, towards anyone in the person of Jesus Christ. He is love. The Lord is not slow to fulfill his promise, but is patient. Oh, the Lord is an everlasting God, the creator of heaven and earth. He never tires of you. But his understanding is unfathomable. How much more he knows, how much more he understands. He crowns me with love and mercy and satisfies my soul. His love has been poured into our hearts daily through the Holy Spirit, who has been given to us, a gift, a gift. God is not man that he should ever lie, and he'll never change his mind. For God so loved the world, for God so loved Shawndra, he gave his only son for me. He's compassionate, he's merciful, he's the sustainer of all things, the giver of all things, the Lord of all things. So Galatians 2:20, the life which I now live in the flesh, it's talking about me, the life I live in the flesh, I live through faith. Faith in what? Faith in faith itself? Faith in formula? No, faith which is the Son of God. Who's that? Well, he's the one who loved you and gave himself up for you. These are the truths that when Jesus wants to look you in the eye, says, believe exclusively. Exclusively. I'm telling you the truth. You and me. You and me. Dear Lord Jesus, we thank you for who you are. We thank you that you love us. We thank you that you're there for us. We thank you that we have these truths that are always true. And I pray for that moment right now where the Holy Spirit will make that come alive, where you look each one of them deep into their soul and reassure them, you are still God. You are still God. And that they can follow you, not knowing what is going on, but that you are still God. You always have been. You always will be. In Jesus' name.
Hey, I'm Pastor Derek.
And I'm Pastor Shawndra.
And thank you for joining us here at Advanced Church Online.
It's our hope as a church to help you deepen your relationship with Christ and strengthen your faith.
And we would love to connect with you. And there's a number of ways that you can do that. You can email us, you can text us, or you can comment below. And of course, you can always visit our website to get more information about us.
Thanks for joining us. See you next week.